I sat down with this guy, a billionaire, got to have lunch with him. And in that conversation, when I left, the thing I walked away with was, holy shit, this guy didn't have a clue what he was doing. He was just too stupid to quit.
What does it mean to be cool as opposed to being interesting? If you want to know the answer to that question, you might want to talk to my friend Anthony. An ex-martial artist, rock climber, chess champion, Anthony has done it all. But I suppose the greatest comeback of his life came when his ex-fiancée left him. Anthony then went on to become a real estate millionaire and one of my good friends. In this episode of the podcast, we talk about building your story Bible, making the most interesting season of your life happen now, and above all else, continuing on. Welcome to episode 19. This episode is brought to you by Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers. Magnesium Breakthrough and Bioptimizers have been a long-standing partner of the channel. In fact, I've been taking Magnesium Breakthrough for the last 2 years, and it's really easy. It's 2 tablets every single night. I've noticed at the very least, my Oura Ring sleep scores, my deep sleep component of my sleep, which I think is one of the more important ones, is at least above 90 minutes every single night, especially when I take Magnesium Breakthrough, even if I go to sleep late. Magnesium is a mineral that's deficient in at least 80% of Americans, at least according to this book, Sleep Smarter. And so I've been disciplined about it because really there's no metric that has a greater impact on your performance with life than sleep. And for the entire month of November, Bioptimizers is running a Black Friday special. You can use my code bioptimizers.com/Captain Sinbad with the code Sinbad10. That's bioptimizers.com/Captain Sinbad.
I don't care about being cool. I care about being interesting. And so I think people who are so worried about like being cool, they're focusing on the wrong thing. They're focusing on the shadow being cast onto the wall. They're not focusing on what the thing is that's standing in front of the light that's being cast on the wall, right? So cool is the shadow, but being the interesting person, that's what casts the shadow. So that's the thing that you should focus on. And the clothes don't really make you interesting. They don't really make you cool, like in a way that is substantial. So more important is to focus on like, what are the things about you as an individual that make you interesting, right? Like you're doing skydiving, you're doing boxing, you're doing like gunplay, and you're doing the gym. You're stacking all of these like building blocks of interest and intrigue, which for you in the moment when you're living it maybe doesn't seem very interesting because you're like, I go to the gym 5 times a week. It's like, what? Not very interesting to me. But in 10 years from now, when you're 40 years old and you have a rocking bod, people are like, wow, how is this middle-aged dude look so damn good? Well, it's because you did really boring work, which reflected as being interesting in the grand scheme.
Do you feel interesting today?
Right now? Like right in this instant?
Just in this season of your life. Do you feel very interesting?
But I think everybody is fundamentally interesting. It's just that they struggle to identify what the things about them in their life are interesting. And a big part of it, I think, is if you're just self-aware and introspective and you spend time, create a story Bible where you go through your life and you look at like all the different things that helped forge the character that is you, and then start pulling the threads of those things. I was working with this woman who she's a mortgage broker, and she wanted to get into commercial real estate, raising capital and buying big apartment buildings. And we're sitting there. It's like, okay, so what's your story? And the story she starts telling is like, oh, I've been in mortgage for 20 years and I know this like the back of my hand. And it's like boring. It's like, nobody cares about that. I was like, tell me where you were as a kid. She's like, oh, I grew up in Bulgaria during, communist bloc era. And I was this little girl who would listen on the radio to like these American shows. And I was like, you sound a lot like Arnold Schwarzenegger, just a little girl in Bulgaria. And she's like, well, yeah, it was kind of like that in the sense that I was dreaming about America and I didn't know what it would take to get there. I just knew like that's where I needed to be. And so like that became her life goals, getting to America. And like she had this crazy journey to make that happen. And it all ultimately led to this place of, then she got into mortgage and then she got into real estate. But it's like, man, your story is so much more interesting when you go back to the very beginning of like the person that you were before, like Peter Parker before he got bit by the spider. And then you come to where you are. And because then in that gap between who you were and who you are now, that's actually pretty damn interesting for 99% of people, assuming that you're growing and you're changing in some meaningful way.
This phrase you said, like story Bible, is that like a defined exercise, or is that something you just said in this moment? Like,
that's something that I teach people how to do. I don't know if there's like other people that talk about it, but I think I learned it from somebody else. So it's not an original concept. It's just the main reason people struggle. Okay, so people struggle to tell stories for like one of three reasons. One is they don't know how to tell a story. Two, they don't know which stories to tell. And then three, they don't know how to tell them in their way. Right. So they don't understand the mechanics. They don't understand they're not clear about which stories, and then they don't have the delivery. When you really peel it back, understanding the mechanics of storytelling is actually pretty straightforward. But when we all, I think, are pretty good storytellers, we just don't realize it. The harder part is people not realizing, okay, how do I tell my story? Which stories are worth telling? How do I tell it in an intriguing way? And because you're so close to it, I think what helps is to create a story Bible. This is where you just go through and you think through, like, when I was 10 years old, my dad, he abandoned me at this thing and it had a formative impact. Or when I was 13, this kid hit me in the back of the head with a baseball bat when we were on the playground. And you just go through your life and you just start writing down these little vignettes, just little mile markers in your life, no matter how big or small. And once you have those raw stories, now you can start to connect them. Because most people have never stopped to connect their stories, to realize, like for me, when like that story of being abandoned, that happened when I was 13 at the South Dakota State Chess Championship. My dad dropped me off. He left me to go play chess, came back after I'd won it, got in the car with the trophy. I put it in the back seat and he goes, "How did you do?" And I was like, "Well, I won." And he goes, "Good, you were supposed to." Mm-hmm. And I was like, all right, okay, those are the rules of the game, I guess, of life. Mm-hmm. Now is that I'm expected to be the best, right? And it was only in like unpacking that story that I realized like that had the through line through the rest of my life, and like trying to achieve these different things, like that chip on the shoulder. But I never would have realized that if I hadn't first put them down in the story Bible to then sit and reflect on. And so that can just be a really powerful exercise.
Are you glad that your dad said that, like you're supposed to? Because maybe it ultimately led to things that wouldn't have happened otherwise? Or do you think you could have basically found fulfillment and found conventional success and otherwise, even without that? I don't know what that feeling was for you. Yeah. I don't know how that impacted the through line of your story Bible, but it sounds like that moment with your dad especially was like the seed of a journey of like proving your father wrong, kind of like killing your father in a way, like metaphorically.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I do believe you can't change anything without changing everything. So like there's that idea that, you are who you are as the result of the things that happen to you, for better or for worse. And how like how we interpret those events is what matters more than what actually happened. So through my 20s, I interpreted that event in a very different way than I interpret it now. And sometimes that's all that you need. But I think I'm really glad that happened, in the sense that it was formative. And I think it's good to have formative experiences. And whether we label them good or they're bad, I think they're important. And if they're not memorable, think about the fact that when I was 13, I had 364 days that I can't remember. Mm-hmm. But I remember that one. So that was a damn good day. Right? Like if your life is just a culmination of days, if you can't remember 99% of them, were they good days? I don't know. Probably not. Right? And so I think like going back to the idea of being cool, being interesting, is to live like memorable days and live a life worth remembering. And that takes intentionality, that takes reflection, but it also takes, potentially having some crap happen on those days, because that's usually what makes the thing memorable. Like something went wrong, gave you an opportunity to overcome, to grow, and to like progress in some way, or get beat down and put into a prison, right? So like either one of those things can be memorable.
Yeah, the only stories that I have that are worth telling are the ones where things went bad and then I had a rejection basically from someone, and it made me like curious about, what could I do that other men can't do? I've been reflecting about this movie Benjamin Button lately. Do you think it's possible to know the trajectory you'll be on, or to know who you are even until you look back. In my YouTube coaching program for the group cohort people, a lot of times people come in with an intention of what they want their channel to look like. So they'll show me like, I want my thumbnails to look like Johnny Harris, and I want this aspect of my channel. One time, someone in the program, she was meant to write me a script and present a script to me. Instead, she created this incredible mood board, vision board, mood board, and she started explaining it to me for 30 minutes. And I was like, Ashley, this is amazing. Don't ever fucking do this again. Like, this is because I've come to realize, like, only in looking back over what I have done in my channel, or even on my Instagram, the photography we've taken, whatever we have done, it's only in looking back do I see what my channel is about. But I've never been able to preemptively say my channel will be about these things, and then allowed that to happen. I don't know, has the same case been for you? Is it in looking back, do you realize that you were like this rock climbing, martial artist, chess playing, real estate millionaire? Or did you create that in advance? You're like, hey, I'm going to be these things.
No. I mean, life happens like one day at a time, and you can spend so much time planning, like in that instance with Ashley saying like, oh, this is what I want this channel to be like. This is what all the things that I want to build my life around. And I think a lot of people have that for their life. I think it's good to have that vision, but to also recognize like shit's going to happen and you don't know who you are or what your story is until after it's already been told. And then you're looking back at it, to your point. And like with my YouTube journey, what's really funny about this is like somebody the other day was like, you are probably, it's always fun when they say probably, they're like, you're probably my favorite self-mastery channel. I was like, it's interesting. I did not, when I started this channel, think I was going to be talking about self-mastery as much as I ended up talking about it, because, I thought it was going to be, let's talk about business. Let's talk about investing, because those are the things that I have like tangible experience in that I can help you guys with, to help win the money game or whatever. And then through that process, it was like, oh, actually, okay, before you can even do that, you need to master yourself. And entrepreneurship is actually just the ultimate personal development program. That's really all it is at the end of the day. And the product isn't the thing that you end up selling. It's who you become in the process of the growth of the machine. And so that's what the content started to become about. But like, we couldn't have preemptively known that until you start doing the thing, until you have something to work with. And I think like this is where the first draft is like so damn important, right? Like you cannot write a perfect book in your mind. You cannot plan the perfect book. You have to write the book, and then you have to go back and you have to edit it, and then you have to throw out 90% of it and start again, because it's only in the doing that you start to figure out what the thing actually even is.
It's nice for someone with a little bit more experience.
You call me old?
You're just, I would say you're like a, slightly, not to be weird about it, but slightly older brother territory. I would say older brother. That's a good way to label it.
Nice, I'll take that.
Because you kind of have made it to some degree. So it's nice. I don't feel like I've made it yet.
What you just said there is really interesting. You're like, I haven't made it yet. And you kind of implied that I had made it. But there was a podcast I did just very recently where I was talking about how I sat down with this guy, a billionaire, who I looked up to for a really long time. And so I got to have lunch with him. And in that conversation, when I left, the thing I walked away with was, holy shit, this guy didn't have a clue what he was doing. He was just too stupid to quit. That was it. That was the takeaway. And that was really comforting for me at that point, because what you were saying before is like, oh, you've made it. There is no you've made it, right? There is no hill that you get to the top and you put the flag into and you're like, I live here now. It's just the hill keeps going onward and upward forever. And I don't feel like I've made it, right? Like, because there's just so many different layers to the game. In some areas, like if you just stop and you look at it objectively, like I'm better off than I was before. And that's the goal, is to be better, not the best, just to constantly be improving. But I think that feeling of like, I'm not quite there yet, that never goes away. That never goes away. And I think I have that on good authority now, not just in my own personal life, but having talked to hundreds of, we'll call them centimillionaires, we'll say high-level professional athletes, like regardless of what domain of life that you're looking at, nobody ever really feels like they've got there. They've like achieved it. Maybe the closest one that people talk about is like parenthood. But even there, you talk to parents and they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm just winging it. But they're also, there's so much joy that they have in the moment of that they're like, oh, it's kind of okay that I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of figuring it out as I go. But we put so much pressure on ourselves to have it like figured out. And then we get really frustrated because we never seem to figure it out. But it was the wrong question the whole time, because there is no figuring it out.
If there's so much uncertainty, and even if someone who is unquestionably successful feels like they haven't made it, like yourself or these centimillionaire people or clients you've worked with, if no one ever stops feeling it, are there some fundamentals that you hold on to that kind of ensure that there is an art to living successfully, and you are on you're surfing that wave of existence well? Like, do you on those days where you're like, I did this day or this week or this month right, like it felt alive? Do you have fundamentals that help you get to that feeling?
Yeah, I mean, like, regardless of like how successful, again, like however you want to like define that, if you want to say it monetarily or in a relationship or like whatever, like the things that like really lead to like the most fulfilling human existence are the things that you already probably have. Like your health, like the days when you wake up feeling damn good and you can go out for a run, you can lift heavy things, you can go play a game with your friends and like you feel awesome. Like that's a win. And you didn't need to be a billionaire to get that, or to be able to hang out with your bros or hang out with your significant other. Like you didn't need to be a centimillionaire or be the most good looking person ever. You need to show up authentically in those relationships. And so like, yeah, more money is great. You can have nicer things, but those things don't really make you happier. They're just window dressing. But the things that generally do lead to human fulfillment is like, I think the most important thing is progress. Just doesn't even have to be like massive progress, just momentum moved in a meaningful direction, whatever you want to define that as, whether that's your health, your business, your relationships, like progress is what really matters. And if you can just keep that in mind every day, you're like, did I make progress? Did I move forward? Like if you can answer that in the affirmative, then you're going to look back at a certain point in your life and realize that you did pretty well. But if more days than not, you answer the question of, okay, did I move forward? And the answer is no, because you got sucked into video games, you got sucked into alcohol, you got sucked into porn or whatever. Like you're going to look back inevitably and you're going to be frustrated. You're going to be disappointed. And this is where, like, I talk about this all the time. Like you can't consume your way to fulfillment. It can only be created. And so the thing that you have to be asking yourself every day is like, what am I going to create today? Like, what am I going to move towards? And just having that goal and then setting the objective, like defining every morning when you wake up, what's it look like to win the day? Like you get to choose which games you play in life, but not only that, you get to choose what winning and losing looks like. So you get to make the rules. You get to stack the deck. It's like, why play any game that you can't win, that you don't want to win? But the problem is, like, if you don't define what that game is, then you will have to play the world's game. And you can't win that game. But that's what 99% of people are playing. So step one is like, wake up in the morning, define what winning actually looks like, and then go do that. Whatever that is. If that's hit the gym, make 100 phone calls, go talk to 3 girls on the street. Like whatever that thing is, like you could set the barrier so damn low for a win of the day, but like most people just don't realize that they have that power.
You said like the rules of the world, you can never win that game. The world's game, you can never win. I mean, did you ever try to play the world's game? What did winning the day look like when you did? I mean, I get the sense maybe you haven't. Actually.
I don't think I have. Yeah.
You've always done it on your own.
I try to say I do because like it makes me relatable, but like I never really played the world's game, and like not because I was so woke and aware and I was like, I'm not going to play that game. It was more born out of the fact that like I was trying at times half-heartedly, but like I was really just never designed to win that game. From looking at ADHD and saying like I'm not a good employee, like I'm not good in that world, and I don't really toe the line in the way that I would need to if I wanted to even fit into that world. So it's probably not fair to say that like I ever gave it a good full-hearted effort, but I got lucky. But at the time, it didn't seem like luck because I couldn't play. Here's what's fucked up about this is like, at the time, I couldn't play the world's game and win, and I knew it. but I did not know that there was an alternative, that I could go make my own game. So I just kind of like slipped into perpetual Peter Pan mode, where I went and I was like, I'm just going to pursue freedom. Fuck the world. I'm just going to go do what I want to do. And so I traveled the world as a rock climber, and that was great in theory. But then you're progressing in this one domain. But when you zoom out and you ask yourself, okay, what's my purpose? What value am I adding to the world? Because I do think that humans, we want this sense of progress, but we also want to have this sense of like meaning, that what I did here mattered. And the only way that I think we can derive deep, lasting meaning is in relation to other people. And I wasn't doing that at that point in my life. So I had like bucked the world's game, kind of went off and did my own thing. And then I came back and realized like, oh, I'm winning a stupid game and I'm going to win a stupid prize. And that's what the Peter Pan game was. And then I won the stupid prize when I was 28. And then my fiance left me and I was living in a van and I was $80,000 in debt. I was like, oh, cool. This is what this gets me.
I was going to bring that up since, your very first video that really, really took off on YouTube led with those words.
Yeah.
You were 28, you were $80,000 in debt, and then your fiance left you. Do you think that season of your life and then your basically rise to power, at least succeeding financially, which you have done, it's probably started after that 28-year-old, that moment probably triggered something for you to take money seriously, very seriously after that. Because if you even allow yourself to get into $80,000 into debt,
you're playing the game differently. Yeah,
You're not really even that worried about it,
totally.
At that time. Yeah. But something awoke in you, was like maybe a slap to the face, like, okay, I actually need to prioritize this. Was that, whatever happened after that, wouldn't that be a little bit of the world's game, the money game, the world's game, because it was kind of triggered by a girl? Or was that still for you?
Well, the money game, what's interesting I think about that is there's different ways of playing the money game, and the reasons for playing it are important. My reasons for playing it at that point still weren't, I think, the world's reasons. Like, the world definitely wants you to play the status game. People want to make money so that they can have the nice things to impress the people that they don't even like, right? Yeah. That was never my reason. For me, when I was at that rock bottom place, I think the most startling thing was I'd kind of gone through life, and I think we all do this to a degree, is like thinking I'm the main character and therefore nothing bad can happen to me, because you can't kill off the main character, right? And that was a moment in my life where I was like, holy shit, I'm not the main character and I can die. And there's no guarantee that it's all just going to work out. Like, I went through my 20s with this mindset. You could say it was like kind of Zen and kind of Buddhist, but it was just more bullshit of like, nothing can hurt me. Like, it'll all work out. And that was the first moment where I was like, oh shit, there's no guarantee that this is going to work out unless I change. And I had like another moment similar to that a year earlier, actually, when I lost my tooth. And I talk about this where, for years I was like, what's the worst that could happen? Not a big deal. Like, if I don't brush my teeth, I don't floss every night. So what, dad? Fuck you, And then up to the moment where they were like, oh yeah, your tooth is dead. We're gonna have to extract that. And I was like, holy shit, there's consequences to not taking care of myself. Why didn't anybody make that more known to me before? It's not that they weren't making it known. It's just I didn't care. And so that rock bottom moment, that slap in the face, was like, you need to figure your shit out. Because one is like, there are people that do depend on you, whether or not you realize it or you accept that burden yet. They do. I was really great. I was really, really lucky in the sense that I was the one having to bear the weight of my own fuck up. But it wasn't like, worse, I think, for me, and maybe for a lot of people, would have been to be 28, to get married, to have the debt, to have no skills, to not have any reason to go change my life. And then, the next year get a phone call from my dad being like, I have to go to the hospital for this surgery for this thing and I can't afford it. And then, bearing that weight, because then it would have been too late. And I was really lucky. I was forced into it through my own screw ups, and it got me to a place to start to see like, oh shit, life has consequences, and playing this money game can help alleviate those things. But it could have been way worse. It could have been way, way worse.
doesn't that ever like make you feel like you're the main character again then? Because the main character also learns the lesson and like has a triumphant return, you know?
I think there's actually a lot of value in thinking about your life as though you're the main character, like in realizing that the entirety of your human experience is happening within the confines of your skull. Your entire perception of the universe is happening through five senses, right? You're seeing it, you're smelling it, you're tasting it, you're feeling it, right? And so I can't see the world through your eyes. I can't see it through anybody else's perspective. It might look completely different. All I know of the universe is what I perceive inside my brain. So in a very real way, I am the center of the universe, right? And so are you. That gets into like the idea of, okay, what's it mean to recognize that other people are also the main character of the story, and that we're all main characters of our story. And that I think that starts to breed a certain level of empathy to realize like nobody sees themselves as the villain of the story. They all think that they're the hero, and it's all true. We are all the heroes of our story. But I think there's power in looking at your own life and saying, you're the hero. It's either you're going to save the day or you're not. And nobody's going to come and save you. And we talked about this in another video recently where it's like you have to choose. You got two choices. You can either choose to be the victim or you can choose to be the hero. But you can't be both. And most people, nobody chooses the victim. Nobody says, oh, fuck being the hero. I'm going to choose to be the hero. They do it subconsciously. They do it not realizing that they have the ability to choose. But just recognizing, looking, and waking up every day and just making the conscious decision to say, today I'm going to choose to be the hero. That right there can transform your life. Just that one decision.
It's really weird. I easily fall into this trap because I hear you say the words hero versus victim. And I think to myself, I would never, ever let myself feel like a victim. I mean, I've been a personal development-ish YouTuber for 5 years now. Why would I, Nikhil, ever let myself be the victim? But the mornings where I wake up and I'm like, oh no, like, how are we going to do this thing? I'm like, okay, the sponsor didn't approve the video. Oh, we need revisions on this now. What am I going to do? And it's only, I would say, a lot in the last 2 weeks, maybe month. There's some certain days I'm like, why am I thinking like this? I can just be like, I'm going to crush it. Like, watch me crush it. I was reading this book. And I don't know, the guy in there, he said, just yell out. I don't know what he said to yell out, but it was something like, I will have complete dominion over this day. It's like, just do it now. Just yell it out. Yeah. And I just yelled it out. Like, I was just getting going with my morning. I was like, I will have complete dominion over this day. And I felt awesome the second I said it. Sometimes I was telling this girl yesterday, like, hey, these are my set of affirmations, because she was being very mopey. She's being
Let me help you out of this,
yeah. So I was like, I don't think like you at all. Like, I don't know how you could afford why would you bother, like, rainy cloud day every day? Why would you let that happen to yourself? And then I played her my track. My go-to track is from this YouTube video from Burger Fiction, best cinematography winners ever. Because I'm a cinematography genius, Nikhil. And then I played that song, and then I started running through. I looked her in the eye and started yelling my affirmations. Not yelling, but like being like. Started saying it, and I've said them so many times that I kind of have it a little bit memorized now. And I was kind of saying it to be funny, but even in saying it to be funny, I started feeling awesome. Yeah. Or for a YouTube video recently, one of the principles I said is like, show gratitude. And I was like, listen, I struggle with gratitude because when I think about, hey, I'm so grateful to have water. Wow. Like, I actually start feeling bad for the kids in India and Africa who don't have access to clean water. So then I just feel bad for the universe, not grateful for myself. But if I think about my team, I just think I am very proud of my team. You know, I think Anuj is a total killer. You know, he's a little bit strong-headed. Like, he'll run into a wall sometimes, but he's very, like, definitive in his efforts.
Yeah, I saw the hole back there.
Yeah.
It's right next to the door. It's very weird.
For Anuj, there's always a straight line between 2 points. No matter what is in the way.
It is direct, yeah.
There's no way of going around it. It's just through it. But if you have a guy like that on your team, that's actually pretty powerful. Like, totally. He doesn't mind going through the wall. He's like, listen, we need a crew. We got to get through this wall. It's like that mindset is pretty powerful. And like that, I feel that way about everyone. You know, Axel has a totally different energy. He's got a softer, more slow energy, but it's very atmospheric. He's very good at stuff like that. Vincent, who you kind of lightly, gently no. He's very meticulous. That's why he's on the emails and all this stuff, like all this decorum and diplomacy, which I suck at. He's so good. If he wants to like correspond emails between, it's just so polite and correct. And so every time I think about the team, I start feeling, so in that video, as I said, I'm grateful for my team. I actually started to feel grateful in the moment. It was really shocking. And so I realized that it is, I wonder, maybe it's just me, but sometimes it can be very instinctive to feel like a victim. And you must remind yourself through some of these hacks, like affirmations or gratitude, or just telling yourself, like, it's going to be a great day. I am the hero. I choose to be like the changer of events today. Yeah.
What you're talking about is like so spot on. Nobody chooses to be the victim. And even the people like us, personal development, YouTube people who think about this stuff a lot, you still fall into the trap of victimhood. Like all the time, we all do it. And you wake up some mornings, you just don't feel good. You don't feel off. Right. And you might not realize that like you're choosing to be the victim in that moment. You don't even realize you're being victimized by old age or by the universe or like maybe even your past self. Like I'm being victimized right now by the decisions Nikhil made yesterday. Right. He didn't go to bed on time. Now I feel like shit. Right. And now you can let that snowball into the rest of your morning and say like, well, I guess this morning is just a write-off. It's just going to be a sucky day, right? So that victimhood is just so insidious. You don't see it, and you have to be able to call it out and shine the light on it. And once you do that, then you realize you have power, you have choice, you have agency. And I think that's the most important thing of any hero in any story is that they have agency. They have the ability to change the world around them through their choices. If you can't do that, then you're not the hero. You're an NPC by definition. If you don't have choices, the ability to change the world around you, you don't mean anything. But you do have those powers. I wrote this down just this morning because, I struggle with gratitude in the same way. Like I did gratitude journaling for many years. You look at the research and they're like, 500% boost to productivity. Yeah, that sounds like a great thing. Do your gratitude journal. Write down 3 things every morning that you're grateful for. And I just realized after a couple of years of it that I had bastardized the process. It was a checklist to be done to make me feel good about having done the thing. But I didn't feel good about the things I was writing. And I was struggling. I was looking around at things and then being like, oh, these headphones. I'm grateful for these headphones because these are great. They noise canceled. They're awesome. And I'm grateful for this couch, right? So you start looking around at things and being like, I should be grateful for the water, but you don't really feel the gratitude. And so that's actually the wrong way to go about it. Like the right way to do gratitude is to look inward and be like, what are you grateful for? Like, what are the things, like to your point, your team, like I'm grateful for my team. Okay, fixate on that. It doesn't matter that you're grateful for everything. That was the mistake I was making, is thinking that the gratitude practice was you need to go and be grateful for everything. No, it's about becoming aware of the things that you are grateful for and then holding on to that, like that feeling of gratitude, because then that spirals out, not outward in. And so this morning I wrote, happiness is a choice. And that pisses off a lot of people. Like that idea that happiness is a choice. You tell somebody that, especially if they're in like the doldrums, like, oh, you're a little bit cranky right now. You realize happiness is a choice. You're probably going to get into a fist fight, and they're going to put up a lot of defenses. But the truth is, like, you could choose to be happy at any given moment. You just choose not to. You've just made a decision, whether or not you realize it or not, like to not be happy. And you could take that same word happiness and you could interchange hero. You've made a choice not to be the hero in this moment. And just recognizing that, I think, is really powerful, because nobody willingly chooses to be the victim. They only do it by default and out of ignorance. But as soon as you shine that light, nobody wants to be the victim anymore.
You said this thing about we get to choose what the game is and we get to choose what it means to win the game. But for someone who's like starting out, or maybe they, like me, I think I had been playing the world's game luckily I didn't stay in it for too long. I think I was playing the world's game for about a year or two, and it was making me miserable, like very miserable. But I struggle with the knowing what my game is. Like, what is the game for me, just for me? Because I don't know, maybe my version of the dad and the chess story, like the chess tournament story, it has my auto default is to play the world's game because I just see conquest there, potentially I find my meaning through it, but I don't want to be that way. And I think some people, a lot of my audience, I would say like 20% of my audience is either Indian or Indian American. It's a pretty solid part of our conditioning to play the world's game. The world's game, like the rules are very defined.
You know the game.
Yeah.
You know it's safe. The rules are there. But again, this goes back to the idea that you can't consume your way to fulfillment. And the world's game is by definition just a game of consumption. You're just going to play the thing. You have to be able to create your own game. That's where fulfillment comes from. And that's hard. It's an act. It's something that requires you to insert energy. It's much easier to wake up and just play the world's game because it's foisted upon you. You don't have to do anything other than just play. In your game, you have to decide what the game is. You have to make the rules, and then you get to play it. And so it's like anything that we procrastinate. Like there's a certain level of activation energy that's required. And I can't remember who said it, but they said it really well that like we'll procrastinate, we'll delay 20 years to do the first hour of work towards our dream. Mm-hmm. And thinking like we put off so much longer because the activation energy required to actually get off of our ass and do that initial thing. And the initial thing here is to define what the game looks like. But I think the really easy trap to fall into there is like thinking you have to get it right and plan it perfectly and have this like fully fleshed out game. The best games that I've ever played, like my buddies and I, my closest friends, we're nerds in the sense that like we'll turn anything into a game. Like we'll be sitting around and we'll be sitting here and be like, let's see how many times we can throw this pillow into that garbage can. Okay. Now we've turned just sitting here into a game, and then it'll start to evolve. It's like, okay, so actually, if it lands in there, it's 3 points. If it lands sideways, it's 2 points. If it lands like touching it, that's 1 point. If it lands nowhere near it, you actually have to run around the table, right? So the game just starts getting more and more complex, but complex in ways that we couldn't have planned out perfectly from the beginning. And so going back to Ashley, that example, like you can't plan this stuff too much. You have to set a course and then set sail. And then when you get to that, wherever you set sail for, some distance on the journey, you go, oh, this is the wrong path. Then you can triangulate, change course. But you can't change course. Changing course doesn't matter until you've left the shore.
But theoretically, you leave the shore for some defined island or destination.
Or direction.
Just
a direction.
Just a direction.
Could just be a direction.
For me, it's
just to see what's out there.
Sometimes I struggle. If I'm not playing the world's game, I'm playing this game for myself. What goal should I set? What should I do? Because there's so many avenues before me. I could drop this whole thing and just be a travel filmmaker, travel YouTuber, or I could go back to corporate and just climb up the Salesforce ladder. Because even though I don't feel inherently passionate about Salesforce or CRM technologies, I like this. I always liked getting the certificates. Like, I just enjoyed. Yeah. I kind of enjoy studying for having something to study for, getting better at it, and then developing technical knowledge. Or I could just be a pickup artist. Genuinely, like I actually do think about that. Like, what if I just travel the world and try to get really good? I mean, maybe it's a little degenerate in the long term. Like, nothing is definitively being accomplished. The goal that I've set for myself right now in this season.
It's kind of like Mark Manson's path, right? Like he started off as a pickup artist. That's what he was writing about, Neil Strauss, and like what was that book that he wrote?
Oh, The Game.
The Game. Yeah. Like that was Mark Manson's journey. And then he realized like, oh, this is really shallow. He'd been doing it for years, traveling the world. And then he started writing about personal development and then The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And it's like, you could do that, but in reverse.
I could arrive at the game and actually be like, this is the best out of all. The rest is for nerds.
I found fulfillment.
Yeah. No, I don't want to be anything like Mark Manson. I don't even care. He's actually done nothing wrong, but I just don't give a fuck. Like, fuck
I don't want
that guy. I worry about, the game I have set for myself is I just have the best personal trainer in the world. In Austin Gelhar. You can find him on YouTube, Austin Gelhar. And I have this lifestyle that's very conducive to a high level of fitness, or getting closer and closer to a high level of fitness. So I'm pursuing it. I basically run and lift every day. I lift 5 days a week. I run 7 days a week. it's a very self-indulgent lifestyle in the sense that I'm either working out like or recovering like 4 to 5 hours a day, and it just feels incredibly self-indulgent, but I can definitively play and win this game that a lot of people don't have access to because they have kids or they have like a really a day job where they don't get to set their own hours or something like that. So I just set the goal of like getting to 175 pounds and relatively lean, like 13% body fat. And I don't know if that's the right game to play because it is very time consuming to play the game the way it is. You know, fitness can be, when you're first putting on muscle is a very laborious process. You've been training a lot longer than me, but I've only been in this world for a while. But I every day I kind of like wake up and I'm like, should I just like marry the right girl and have kids instead? Like, is that a more productive use of my time than all this lifting and running? So I have my doubts about the game that I should be playing. And I wonder if you have any advice on how to mitigate that, to feel more confidence in what the rules you set for yourself.
I think if you need to change the game, just recognize that you're not married to it. You can change it at any point. And the game that you play in your 20s is maybe going to be different than the one you play in your 30s. Maybe the game that you play when you're 31 is different than when you're 32, right? Yeah. So, and that's okay. I think getting your identity too tied up in one thing, like at the beginning of this, you kind of wanted to talk about like, I have an esoteric past and have done a few different weird things in my life, is because I've never had my identity tied to any one of those. At a time it was, but I was always willing just to take that hat off, put it down and put on a new hat. And that's just a quirk of like my psychology, but it's also very helpful to recognize that like what you do now does not need to be the thing you always do. And so if this is the season of physical self-mastery, I think that's actually one of the most important lessons that any male or woman can learn, is that you have ultimate control over your body and that you can do anything with it. That you could run a marathon, you could lift 500 pounds. Like you don't know what the limits are of your body, because 99% of people will never experience what the actual boundary of their capacity, physical capacity is. And so I think there's a lot to be learned there. That's why David Goggins resonates with a lot of people, because they look at him and they might realize I've never pushed to that place, but watching somebody do that gives me hope that I can also. And so it's kind of aspirational in some ways, but in a way, like the game that you're playing in many ways, both with YouTube and the content that you create, is you need to first climb the mountain before you can help other people climb the mountain, right? Or you need to first climb the mountain before you can even tell people what's up there. And in a real way, like, if that physical mastery is part of that, and saying, oh guys, okay, I went to the top of this mountain, let me report back. Physical health, very important. However, to a point, it becomes no longer helpful. Here's where that point was for me, but I could only discover it by having gone past it. And so now you can report that back. In a lot of ways, you're like the messenger, right? And that's kind of how I look at what I do now, is like, how can I share the things that I've experienced? And it's not going to triangulate perfectly or map to your life, but maybe you can take some of those data points and use it in a meaningful way. And so maybe I think more so that's the game I see you play, is like using yourself and the lessons or the experiments that you do on your life to then be able to report back and be like, okay, here's what I found down this path. And I think if more people did that, we would have more data points to be able to triangulate for, as a young person, like which way I want to go.
I also think it's the most superior way to YouTube. If you were to talk about content creation in general, not just YouTube, any content, I would say I can't think of a third way to do it. It's either have an experience and report back on it, or write a book report. Those are your two options. You know, like a research-driven video essay or something. And I enjoy the odd video essay here and there, for sure. But what I much more prefer is having an experience or listening to someone's experience. And I'm not sure why, but it's just like the first-hand take of someone's. It feels like this is an industry where you could report back on fake things. And I think that's very true, especially in the finance and business niche.
Totally. It's hard to... Sean Puri said this really well. He said that your body is a bank account that everybody can see. And it's really the only one. It's really the only one. If you think about it. Yeah. Like you can mask your relationships, You can make that look better than it is. And plenty of people do. You can mask your business. Plenty of people do, right? Like Bernie Madoff, billionaire, looked pretty good. Turns out he wasn't, right? The only thing that you really can't fake is your body. In some ways, like sure there's steroids and sure there's like human growth hormones and things like that, but there's a certain amount of work that needs to go in to be able to achieve the thing. And so I think if nothing else, just to be able to prove to yourself that you have the ability to be the master of your own universe. I don't know if I ever told you this story. The very first novel I ever wrote that I didn't publish was called Masters of the Universe. And the reason I didn't publish it is because one of my beta readers came back and was like, isn't that the name of the He-Man universe? Or I was like, oh, is it? Yeah, it is. Okay. So we didn't go with that.
Just for like the naming, you didn't go through the book. Oh, it's terrible.
It turned me off so badly. I was like, oh no, what have I done here?
Jeez.
But if we're talking about like you as like the focal point of your own universe, then the very first thing that you can like control and outwardly manifest to everybody else's universe is your body. And I think that's like not the easiest, but the battle that if you win that one, everything else gets a whole lot easier.
It's one of the most straightforward battles there is, I would say.
Straightforward, yeah.
Fitness, right? It's difficult, but it's very, very straightforward. Whereas business, I don't know if it's as straightforward. Relationships especially, I don't know if they're as straightforward.
Yeah, no. I think health is the easiest one in many ways. Like follow these steps. Your body is a basic ass machine. Yeah. And we know how it works at this point. Like get good nutrition, exercise, and sleep. Really,
yeah.
That's it. Like that's all you really need. And all of that is pretty well known at this point. I think it's the easiest to win because if you're not winning it, the only reason, barring some like outlier events like, oh, you were incapacitated and you're paralyzed from your neck down. Like the only reason you aren't succeeding is 100% your fault.
Totally.
And that's a really easy one to help people get out of their victimhood on initially. Easy in the sense of like, if you can get them to a place to realize like you are the result of the decisions that you made, the foods that you ate, the exercise you didn't do, the sleep that you have been depriving yourself of, then you can move forward. But like the mindset stuff, which is just as important of a battlefield, but way, way harder to fight because there is no external proof of it. Like, how do you know that you're more calm and poised and present today than you were 3 years ago? How do you know you're more grateful now than you were 3 years ago? I don't know, but I can bench more than I did then.
Yeah.
So that's an objective marker.
True.
Right? So I think that's the one that you got to win first. Because if you can win that one first, that's the only one that you get like undeniable proof is in the pudding.
Well, what game would you say you're playing right now? And what would winning look like?
I think the big game that I'm playing is an act of creation of trying to come to a deeper understanding of what I think of the world. So, and that's maybe born just out of a place where it's like, I don't need to worry about money and these other things as much now. So it's like unlocked higher level questions to be answered as you move up like that hierarchy of needs. But these days it's just a matter of like, what can I put back into the universe in an objective way beyond myself? And I don't know necessarily what that looks like, but just every day waking up and be like, okay, what is the thing that I'm going to create that nobody else could have created? Like think a little bit about it in terms of legacy, which is like a short-lived concept because, you expand out, 4,000 years, nobody knows who you were regardless, but it is still a helpful mental exercise to think through, what am I creating the day that's going to outlast me? And that couldn't have existed if I hadn't been here. Like to make, as Steve Jobs, like kick your dent into the universe.
So you're kind of like in your artists. Well, you've always been an artist in different ways. Started out writing books and all this stuff, but you're very much like a writer, creator, that kind of artist, visual artist these days. Like you're experimenting with a lot of different formats.
Yeah, and I would say the art these days it has shifted fundamentally from being very inward focused to being externally focused. So like all the content that I create now is more for other people than it ever is for me. in a way. Whereas like when I first started writing science fiction fantasy, that was really just me getting to mentally masturbate for, hours on end in my own little universe. And if other people wanted to read it, cool. It wasn't going to fundamentally change their life or improve it. But now the things that we're trying to create, I think, are tools and resources that can actually help people, like if they choose to.
I'm actually trying to arrive back at that version of you. I mean, I wouldn't call it, it's like, there is maybe a component of you really are pleased with yourself and it's enjoyed to get lost in your own universe, these things that you create. But I think that is also valuable to people. I think one of the truest ways to destroy nihilism is to watch a great movie or listen to a great song.
So have you watched One Piece?
No.
Okay. So One Piece, we just finished watching that on Netflix, and that whole series is amazing. It's like 20 years running. Thousands and thousands and thousands of episodes, and
damn, you saw all of that?
No. But they did like a live action version.
The live
Netflix,
action,
like 8 episodes, and that's how I got introduced to the universe. But then I went kind of down the rabbit hole because I love digging into creators who create like whole universes that they live within. And what I foresee in my future as I get old, like in my 60s and 70s, I foresee that I will get back into, maybe not that even old, maybe soon, probably a lot sooner, getting back into that act of creation that's purely inward. But first, I need to feel as though I gave more to the universe than I took. And that was a thing that I really struggled with through my 20s, was I felt like I'd taken so much from the world, but had given so very little back. And so even when I started writing that science fiction, it was like, I'm still not really giving anything back. This is still me taking.
Got it.
And so shifting that focus so that I can like turn the scales net positive in my favor so that I can go back to being selfish. That'd be the ideal.
Yeah, I wonder how that'll play out for me, because I truly feel as if I've been making content outward for the last 5 years, but also I would say every time I've made a video that is true, it really was a video for myself. I would say this entire summer, every video I made was actually for myself. Like it was me solving my own problem. So actually I don't know if it's for good or bad, but I don't even make the video for the audience. I'm just like I'm solving my own problem almost. It's like my journal of like how I'm figuring things out. And I like the idea of delving deeper inwards, but then again, I've never created, universes.
I wonder, like, because you're such a creator in your heart, that do you have a universe that you have thought about that you'd create? Like Tim Ferriss recently did this with Cock Punch.
I don't know what that is. No, what?
Yeah, so Tim Ferriss he's been drawing forever, and he had this universe. He wanted to get into fiction. He's like, I want to take my hand at it. I want to try storytelling in this fictional universe. So he created it as like Game of Thrones with chickens.
Holy shit.
And it's like this graphic novel that was turned into a podcast.
Oh my
God. Yeah, you just check it out. He called it Cock Punch.
That's actually kind of gangster.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And I think there is something so damn powerful about creating a universe and then like expressing it.
Yeah.
And so, and I mean, that's like, I think why you like movies in a real way is like they're creating a contained universe and saying, here you go. And I haven't done it in a long time, but it's a very cool feeling. And for you, it might be the game worth playing.
That is the ultimate game for sure. We're at our hour. Tell the people where they can find you. This is me doing my Hot Ones ending for you.
Hells yeah. Yeah. All right. So if I don't know, find me on YouTube, I guess. YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube is the main one. Anthony Vicino.
Anthony Vicino.
Also the Anthony Vicino on Instagram. You post everywhere.
Dude,
LinkedIn,
I'm on Twitter
and
LinkedIn.
Threads.
Yeah. No, I gave up on Threads.
No, you're not. You gave up on Threads.
Threads was
it was a 2-week little stint.
People got excited for like a week, and I'm like, you guys, this is just Twitter but worse.
Yeah, look up Anthony Vicino. He makes great videos, great scripts, well written. He's been a writer for so long, and it translates to his videos. It's better than the other guy's finance video, so check him out. You can find this podcast, which has now been relabeled 3 times, A Life in Momentum.
Oh, is that what it is now?
That's what it is.
Is this no longer Becoming the Killer? No. God damn it! I'm just now finding this out. You came in with
killer.
I came in with the wrong vibe.
No, it's much more like friendly and boppy now.
Do you think your listeners realize, like, how quickly do you think they realize that I wasn't Thomas? They're just kind of like the token white guy. Like,
Every white man we've ever had is simply Thomas.
It's simply Thomas in a different outfit.
Like, Thomas, we need a new podcast guest. Really got to crank out these magnesium breakthrough videos.
that ad spend.
Hey, get yourself some magnesium breakthrough by optimizers.com/Captain Sinbad.
And go take a nap.
Go take a nap. Get some sleepies in. Deep sleep, gang. Where you at? Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah.
Everyone, you can find the podcast wherever podcasts are found, and we'll catch you next time.